Welcome back, fellow scribes and world builders, to this explainer. It's so great to have you here today. Look, we're opening up a rather dark, totally fascinating chapter of folklore, but I actually want to begin with a bit of a weary naturalist warning about an encounter from the field that, frankly, still haunts my study. When we think of magical entities, our minds usually go straight to roaring beasts or towering monsters, right? But the absolute most dangerous entities in your high fantasy settings aren't the ones that break down the door. No, they're the ones that perfectly mimic the life you already know. Today, we're looking at Decarabia, the Marquis of Stars, birds, and stone wisdom.
Consider this incredibly unnerving passage from our source text. It describes the arrival of this entity, a star unfolding like a flower of cold fire, and then these artificial birds that settle completely silently on the rafters. They've got red throats, silver beaks, and wings like cut garnet and moonstone. One drinks from a bowl of water and another sings. But it sings with the voice of the king's dead son. It's chilling, isn't it? This imagery really emphasizes the terrifying beauty of artificial life. It's proof to any novice writer that beautiful things can be dangerously hollow, and that horror definitely doesn't have to be loud to be absolutely devastating.
Section 1. The Taxonomy, from grimoire to dark fantasy.
Okay, so to write this entity properly in your own world building, we first got to unlearn those roaring monsters from the common bestiaries. If we're going to craft truly memorable encounters, we need to understand where this archetype actually comes from. Historically, over in the classic Ars Goetia tradition, Decarabia, sometimes written as Decarabius, is classified as the 69th spirit. He's a great marquis commanding 30 legions. But his entrance is notably subtle. He doesn't show up as a soldier or a king or some monstrous hybrid. He appears simply as a star contained within a pentacle-like figure. When commanded, he takes human form, and his domain covers the hidden virtues of birds and precious stones.
Now, we want to take this raw folklore and spin it into narrative gold. If you compare the historical text to modern dark fantasy, you'll see what I mean. The Ars Goetia reads almost like an inventory list. Name, rank, appearance, powers. Decarabia just starts as a static geometric sign. But for us, narrative architects, he has to evolve. We need to transform him into a refined scholar of impossible nature. His horror lies in this exacting, cataloging intelligence, rather than just brute force. He's a keeper of correspondences, a master of that incredibly strange border between raw nature and artifice.
Section 2. Anatomy of an Illusion. Decarabia's true danger to storytellers is misunderstanding his foundational elements. So let's crack open the old text and examine his 3 core symbols a bit more closely. Together, they form this brilliant metaphor for the struggle between sterile classification and poetic truth. As the source documents reveal, Decarabia teaches the hidden virtues of the natural world, the invisible qualities of stones and birds, but he simultaneously produces imitations of them. And it's exactly this ambiguity, is it a real bird or a construct or maybe a memory, that makes him so incredibly useful for fantasy, horror, and philosophical fiction. Our very first symbol is the star. The star implies orientation, navigation, and hidden order. It shines from way up above, giving direction without ever actually coming down to Earth. But remember, the star is distant. It guides, sure, but like a cold cataloger, it can so easily misguide your protagonists deeper into a maze of their own making. It represents a strict boundary between raw mystery and visible form.
Next up, we have the bird. The bird inherently belongs to movement and voice. It's constantly crossing thresholds between the ground and the sky. But here's the catch. Under Decarabia's domain, the bird represents false life. Its movement and song completely manufactured to perfectly, tragically mimic the living. They seem alive, they drink, they behave naturally, but their source, utterly uncertain. Finally, we have the stone. The stone belongs to weight, memory, and hidden qualities locked beneath a totally silent surface. In old folklore and lapidary traditions, precious stones weren't just pretty decorations. They held actual hidden virtues, things like protection, poison resistance, healing, or even planetary influence. Or, if they're in the hands of this particular Marquis, perhaps a terrible curse hidden beneath a glittering exterior.
Section 3. Designing the Scholar NPC.
Like I mentioned earlier, novices often write their villains loud. Instead of doing that, let's construct a blueprint for quiet, precise horror when designing complex, magical NPCs or antagonists for your campaigns and stories. Decarabia's core narrative function is a teacher of hidden nature and a creator of false birds. His personality, it's not aggressive at all. It's patient, observational, refined, and distinctly distant. He is fascinated by patterns and hidden value rather than bloodshed. Really, he could be an ally and antagonist, a cursed artisan, or maybe a librarian of a bizarre mineral garden. So when you're staging his scenes, you really want to lean heavily into sensory details to build a totally unsettling atmospheric illusion. Visually, give him a human form, but maybe with a feathered cloak, heavy stone ornaments, and eyes that look exactly like polished minerals. And his voice shouldn't just be normal speech. Make it soft, melodic, and weirdly layered, as if several birds are singing right behind every sentence he speaks. And his weakness? Well, because his entire knowledge base depends on classification, he fundamentally struggles with anything that flat out refuses to be categorized.
Section 4. Field Applications for Dark Fantasy.
So, how do we actually deploy these tragic artificial omens into your narratives? We've got the theory down. Now let me share some practical field applications to really hook your audience. Your stories should revolve around these 3 core narrative themes. First, the relationship between the natural and the artificial. Second, precious stones containing hidden virtues. And third, classification as a literal form of power. The core conflict in these plot hooks always revolves around naming a thing to control it, and the absolute heartbreak that ensues when your characters stumble upon false life. Looking at the story seeds from our source material, I want to present 2 specific tragedies you can just unleash upon your characters. Both of these are constructed straight out of this entity's domains of stones, birds, and artificial memory. The first one is called the lapidary's bargain. Imagine a local jeweler who learns from Decarabia that one particular stone has the virtue to heal a broken mind or completely restore a lost memory. The jeweler uses it, and it works beautifully. But then comes the tragic realization. The stone only heals by stealing those exact memories from another living person. So the lapidary's bargain escalates from a quiet, neat little anomaly of hidden stone virtues into a devastating narrative crisis of stolen minds. Let's move to our second hook and see how this one builds. The glass aviary. A wealthy noble family owns a perfectly silent aviary filled with these intricate, beautiful gemstone birds. For years, it's merely a display of wealth and artifice. But then, an unseen shift triggers an awakening. One night, these artificial birds suddenly become animated. They start singing terrifying prophecies. But, and here's the kicker, they do so using the distinct voices of the family's deceased ancestors. It starts as mere decoration and just twists into profound psychological horror. Section 5. Staging high fantasy illusions. As my study candle burns low on this topic today, we come to my final warning on the subject of artificial life and perfect imitation within your world building. The source text provides this absolutely incredible insight. He turns wonder into system.
That makes him useful to scholars, but dangerous to poets. So the absolutely crucial point is this. Decarabius forces a character to realize that to classify and recreate the natural world perfectly is just an exercise in hollow, devastating control. Not every beautiful imitation contains a living soul. I want to leave you and your readers with this haunting question. When a created bird drinks from a fountain and sings exactly like the lost loved one you actively mourn, is it a miracle that deserves freedom? Or is it a cruel mockery that proves resemblance is simply not resurrection? Think deeply about how your characters would answer that. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep writing, keep exploring those dark corners of your worlds, and I will see you next time.